Hello and welcome to Free Hit, an FPL podcast. I'm your host, Chris, joined as always by my co-host, Jace. Jace, how was your game week 16 this week as we head into the festive fixtures?
Chris, I have never been more convinced that I could be a Premier League striker on a mid-table team in my life than this weekend.
You watched Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
I mean, seriously, man, how many of these guys are we pulling that are literally scoring like 2 or 3 goals a season, who are getting paid millions of dollars to score goals and yet can't fucking do it? Well, I could go up there and run around with a chick with my head cut off.
I feel like there have been a lot of good budget forwards this season, FPL-wise.
Maybe for you, not for me.
Who are you referring to? Evan Nielsen. Yeah, okay.
Raul Jimenez. You want me to just go through them all? Here,
well, who are you watching that you're like, this guy sucks?
Oh, well, Evan Nielsen really pissed me off today. Anybody that West Ham has put as the number 9 in like the last 10 seasons, I feel falls into this category.
That's fair.
You've got João Pedro, who I'm pretty sure, and I would love to be corrected on this, I don't think he sprinted once in the entire match this weekend. I don't think he sprinted once. I watched him. He did the Messi the whole 70-some-odd minutes he was in the game. Didn't even sprint. Yeah, it is impressive. That's what I'm saying. Like, I could go up there and lounge around. I mean, come on. What is the threshold here? I feel like the bar is just super low for these guys. I don't know about you. If I showed up to work and only did what I was paid to do 3 times out of 40, I probably wouldn't have a job after a year. But these guys get away with murder. You know, murder being 0 points for my fantasy team.
I think you've had a lot of guys at the wrong times for sure this season. I don't know. It feels like a couple years ago we were talking about like the death of the number 9, how there weren't really any true strikers left, and everybody was kind of this false 9, maybe with the exception of Harry Kane in the Premier League. That was a big talking point. In this season, it feels like we have quite a few true number 9s outside of maybe Arsenal playing Kai Havertz and Liverpool. But, you know, Manchester City have Haaland, Chelsea have Jackson, Newcastle have Isak, even the mid-table teams, Evan Nielsen.
Don't forget Chris Wood.
Chris Wood, Nottingham Forest. I mean, yeah, you can sort of go through the table. It does seem like that position is sort of like back.
You named
this
6 out of like 20 Premier League teams.
Jamie Vardy, Liam Delap. I'm just saying there's a few guys in the mix here this season. Now, whether they're any good or not is totally up to you. But there's more in that bracket than there have been in a while.
It's just crazy how in a week where, again, maybe this is a me thing, and that's fine, whatever. But in a week where I have Mo Salah, Cole Palmer, Haaland, Evan Nielsen, João Pedro, the only goal, right? The only returns that I get are from my fucking defenders and Lewis Hall and Jurrien Timber.
Yeah,
come on.
And then Boom, I got 7 on the bench.
Yeah, I had. Well, I got 17 points on my bench. Again, that's a me problem. But I mean, Evan Nielsen is just literally just blank, and he's supposed to. He was like the Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's like the heir apparent. It was like, yeah, he's gonna be our next. Not Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but our next Dominic Solanke. And don't even get me started on Haaland and João Pedro. But I cannot seem to get the timing right on any of these. So,
all right,
gotta take a nice healthy red arrow here.
Yeah, let's pull up your team. Let's talk about it. I am very curious where you go from here. João Pedro, I think, is still a good pick, but you're still hanging on to Erling Haaland. Still no Saka. Now this week you also have the Ait-Nouri problem, which was
I already transferred. I transferred him out.
Oh, Ait-Nouri's gone.
As soon as he got the first yellow card, I was like, this guy's he's just a boat anchor at this point. Like, literally, look at his last 5 game weeks. He has 1 return. That was 4 points. In 2 instances, he had a -1. And in his latest instance, he's a -2. So across, 4 or 5 game weeks, he's netted 1 point. Yeah. I mean, I've literally been playing with 10 players for like 5 game weeks. And he got like 3 price rises during those game weeks. So I made my 0.2 on him. I sold him immediately.
Who did you get?
I brought in A-Rob, USA.
Yep.
He was I don't know why I didn't have him sooner.
Ait-Nouri might have been the most rage transferred out player in certainly this season. I think maybe since we've been playing FPL. I cannot tell you how many tweets and Reddit threads there were of people that had already sold Ait-Nouri after
It's just,
this afternoon's games concluded.
like I said, boat anchor. Might as well have just been playing with 10 players. I would have been better off, in all honesty.
Yeah. What about the front seven? Like you said, a little disappointing, but none of the premiums returned this week, so it's a little bit hard to
That's why I'm
evaluate.
even more disappointed because, you're watching the game on games on Saturday and you're like, all right, we got away with Salah not captaining Salah. And it's like you're scot-free. Saka didn't return. Arsenal tied. Everything went right, and then everything went wrong. The wet fart of a Manchester derby. You got, again, Evan Nilsson, who had a lot of touches in the box. Semenyo had like 4 shots that he either hit right at the goalkeeper or missed the post by a millimeter.
He looked better from a shot production standpoint than he has in a few weeks. I was encouraged because I think for me he's on the chopping block. He really has not done a whole lot.
My question though is he's just, I don't know who you bring in for him because he's like 5.5. He's still got decent fixtures and United, Palace, and Fulham next. Same with Evan Nielsen, right? I just don't know who I can replace him with that gives me more for that price point than what I have right now. With Ait-Nouri, it was easy. Literally anybody in the fucking game gave me more than Ait-Nouri. That's no problem, right? But I think these are a little more difficult, and it's just, again, a solid team with decent fixtures, good players, and 0 returns.
Yeah, I mean, you still have Holland up top. Have you changed your thinking at all after watching the quote-unquote wet fart of a Manchester derby?
Holland, in the last 3 game weeks, has had 2 returns. So it's not like, am I getting my money's worth for him? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But he had 5, 7, and then obviously 2, and he had a couple opportunities against United, and in 2 game weeks, he's got Everton at home and Leicester away. So again, Villa's away is not a horrible fixture. Do I think he's going to score? No. But Everton and Leicester are 2 pretty decent fixtures after that. So again, I think I'm just going to stick it out because at this point, it's sell him and go to Saka. You know what I mean? And I already used my rage transfer on Ait-Nouri. So
yeah,
don't really want to take a hit.
Fair enough. Let's flip over to my team because I also want to talk forwards. So I've got a front 3 of Cunha, João Pedro, and Nick Jackson. And I watched Alexander Isak play Leicester City from like my hand was covering my eyes. Just so scary.
Yeah.
Watching that guy play. I really hate not owning him, but I felt so relieved that Nick Jackson was at least able to get in touching distance of his performance this week. I cut you off. What were you about to say?
Well, Cunha, how does he not get dinged for his yellow card he got at the end of the match?
Well, I think he could get suspended, which is why
he got a yellow card, just like Ait-Nouri did after the whistle was blown. Ait-Nouri got the second red, and they had no problem giving me a -2 there. But Cunha, I don't think got deducted, did he?
No. He did not.
So
did he get a yellow, or did he just hit someone in the face and get away with it?
I thought he was given a yellow for it. Maybe not. Maybe he does get a suspension. Do you think he gets retroactively, like, can you give a retroactive red card in that situation?
I don't know that it'll be a red card, but he could get like a
suspended.
A 3-match.
He should get suspended,
like that.
To be honest with you, for that. That's just inexcusable behavior for a professional to exhibit. But if we're talking about, the FPL game changing its mind, they gave James Maddison the assist after he tweeted at him. So there's a precedent set. I just need Cunha to tweet at FPL that, hey, I did mean to hit that guy in the face. Please give me a red card. What now?
Yeah, it's bad when the actual players in the league are going after the FPL towers.
He doesn't even own himself in FPL. I don't know about you, Chris, but if I was a professional player that was worth anything, at least, especially the $25 million that we paid for Madison that turns into 50, I would own myself. I would captain myself every fucking week.
Yeah, fair enough. My transfers this week too, by the way, did not go so great. I brought in Trent and Enzo for Brian and Bumo and Rico Lewis, which is exactly the opposite of what I said on our podcast last week.
Yeah.
If you recall, I said that there's no way that Trent is worth the same amount of points as a midfielder, even if he is a better asset in his position. Merseyside Derby gets potentially rescheduled for game week 24. Pull up Trent's fixtures. Oh boy, they look really good. I think I should go ahead and pull the trigger here. Not so good. And it's a shame because I think otherwise I would have done Rico Lewis to Lewis Hall. In hindsight, that would have been a great move for this game week. I'm also out of budget, which prevents me from upgrading Cunha to Alexander Isak now that I have Trent in defense. So had I known that the Cunha suspension was coming, he's not going to get the next fixture against Leicester City. Really just backfired in, I think, a whole lot of ways. So yeah, don't do the opposite of what you say you're going to do on the podcast, I guess would be my takeaway there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. I think I remember many a time where you said, "Oh, I'm going to captain so and so," and then you captain the opposite of who you said, and it worked out for you. So,
well, that's fair. Maybe I'm just keeping myself guessing.
Recency bias.
Yeah. Luckily, because none of the premiums returned and I had double Arsenal defense and Jackson and Cunha did ultimately net returns, it was gray arrow for the week, which I felt pretty good about given how poorly the transfers did. The meta that I'm kind of seeing now is a lot of teams with both Jackson and Isak, kind of as two forwards and then a budget guy next to them. And with Trent in the team and 3 premium mids, I just can't get to that structure. So I'm trying to consider whether that's something I want to try to adjust to or leave the team as is and see what happens with Cunha this week. Speaking of, do you want to get into the game week and start with the Newcastle guys?
Sure.
As a Lewis Hall owner, how
Spelled
happy?
Haul.
Haul. What did you think of the Newcastle performance against Leicester?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was dominant. I was kind of hiding behind the couch because I was like, "Oh, they're gonna concede. Like they're definitely gonna concede at the end here, and I'm gonna lose my clean sheet." But it didn't happen. So 2 returns and all the bonus and a clean sheet's pretty much all you can ask for from a defender like Lewis Hall. The only problem is, in the previous 3 game weeks that I've owned him, he's not returned at all, not even a clean sheet, right? So you spread those points across the 4 game weeks, and it's really not that beneficial. Like, I'm a little upset that I didn't gain more ground from just owning Lewis Hall. But I guess when you bench 17 points, you only have yourself to blame there.
Yeah. He, on live FPL, I was kind of shocked at how high he was owned. He was like the 4th or 5th largest detriment to my rank this week, his 15 points. On the flip side, I don't think you and I really talked about Isak enough, given that they had Leicester and Ipswich coming up. Like, I'm surprised that we were not last week talking more about how are we going to get Isak into our teams. Like, did we just totally whiff on him for these 2 fixtures?
No, I don't think we whiffed. I mean, I think it was a calculated. We talked about him several weeks ago when we were talking about sending Holland away and bringing in a replacement striker and how you could still really do that. He was kind of in that Watkins conversation that we had, but for me, I don't think I could have afforded Isak or Holland to Saka and then Isak also. I think that still priced me out, and I think that was my issue. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, you want a player for 2 fixtures, that's fine, but it's kind of a waste of a transfer if you're only keeping him for 2 fixtures, right?
Yeah, but I think given the festive fixtures, like heavy rotation coming up, Callum Wilson is injured. Before this game, they also played Brentford, who have one of the worst defenses in the league. It just feels like a player and a run that we should have been more aggressive on. And I went Jackson. It was kind of like the 8 million for Jackson or the extra 0.5 for Isak. And like I said, I have no funds, so I'm definitely using all the money I have available. But maybe Jackson still returned this week, still got a ton of shots. So I think still a good pick given Chelsea's fixtures. But I don't know. In hindsight, would you say that Isak worth that extra 0.5? I'm worried Jackson's going to get rotated in the next couple of weeks, and Isak's not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. We did miss his last 3 games, which he did pretty much haul in. So maybe I'll still do that transfer, Chris. Maybe I'll send Holland away and bring Isak in and upgrade Semenyo to Saka.
Yeah.
And go that route.
I like it because
Jackson kind of got lucky to score there at the end too. He was dodging points left and right. Like, I thought he was about to drop a typical Nick Jackson performance, but somehow he came away with one.
But it was a typical Nick Jackson performance because he missed all of the easy chances and then scored the most difficult chance.
And usually those feel good because you're like, haha, like you suck. And then he actually scored one, and I was like, damn it.
Yeah, I was very excited when he scored.
Yeah, I bet. If only it was Palmer who had assisted him, then we would have been okay.
Well, it was Enzo.
Yeah,
so
I know. Well, you were fine. I said we, not you.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Anyway, Isak's an interesting one. I could get him in too, but I'd have to like almost reverse last week's transfer and hit out Trent to get 2 forwards with, which maybe is worth it. I don't know. That seems insane to like immediately undo that. But yeah, it just feels like that's not having Isak is, I would say, is very bad in FPL right now.
Well, they say the one thing to learn about hiring is learning to fire quickly. So, I mean, you could implement that here.
Yeah. Upcoming fixtures for these guys as well, just to point out while we've got them. Ipswich away next week. Villa at home on Thursday the 26th. Man United away Monday the 30th. Saturday, game week 20 away at Spurs on January the 4th. So they're playing basically every 4 days after the next game week. That's where I think guys like Jackson, Jimenez, João Pedro,
Watkins
could get rotated. Watkins has been rotated. Chris Wood missed a start coming back from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Like, Newcastle have Isak, and that's pretty much it. And
Gordon
maybe
can play
that
through
extra
the middle
fixture,
if they really want him to, but then you're kind of taxing Gordon too. So
right. And I think maybe even if that happens for a game, Isak still gets 30 minutes. So
yeah.
Also the penalty taker for Newcastle as well, which Jackson is not for Chelsea.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. Speaking of Chelsea, you and I both captained Palmer this week. What did you think about the performance against Brentford?
There was a lot of Cole Palmer being in the most perfect spot to receive a ball for a one-time finish and his teammates refusing to pick him out. And when they tried, hitting the first defender every time, which was pretty frustrating for me as a non-Chelsea fan and a Cole Palmer owner.
Yeah,
there was a lot of hands up from Palmer after his teammate made a horrible decision to shoot. Is how I'll summarize that game up.
That's pretty typical. I wouldn't say he has the best body language in terms of teammate communication. What did you think of the right side of the field with Noni Madueke and Enzo Fernandez, and then the left side of the field with Cole Palmer and Jadon Sancho? Because to me, that is very stark difference watching the games where the right side, especially with Madueke, is like where attacks go to die. And where it seems like Sancho has been much more productive on the other wing.
Yeah, I think Madueke is just so selfish in his attacking mindset that he either has to be the person that's getting the shot off, and it doesn't matter if he's 30 yards away from the goal or inside the box with no angle, like he's still shooting, which is so frustrating. And I'm sure that's why Palmer's super frustrated, because it's not the same on the other side, as you mentioned. I think Sancho was looking a lot at distributing the ball, cutting the ball back, some reverse passes. He lofted a few up, and I couldn't believe that Nick Jackson didn't get on the end of them because they were in just a primo spot.
Yeah, Sancho got around the keeper once as well. Probably could have scored.
Looked to distribute it instead of shoot himself,
to your point, also set up Jackson for a big chance. Whereas, I felt like Madueke, you're right, just kind of like cuts in and shoots from 20 yards, and that's kind of it.
Again, he can score 1 in 30 games, and it will look like he is like I could do that. I'm almost confident I could do that.
Almost confident.
Almost confident.
We might need.
I'm 30 now. I'm 30 now, so I got to keep that in mind.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say is Enzo playing in this more advanced position is bad for Palmer because he's not a true central 10. He's playing kind of like a half wing on the left, and Enzo's playing the half wing on the right. So that formation, great for Enzo, not so great for Palmer. And, we looked at the fixture here. Chelsea did get, almost 30 shots in this game against Brentford, as we expected, and have Brentford performed season to date, especially on the road. But it didn't seem like Palmer really was on the end of a lot of those chances to me.
No, and like I said, it's bad for Palmer because his teammates aren't smart enough to find him when he's in a really good spot. I mean, I think if you rewatch that game, it'd probably take you 2 hands to count how many times he arrives in the box in a great spot, and he just needs a little bit of a cutback, and it's a much higher percentage chance shot on goal.
Yeah, agree. You also expect Palmer to score some worldies, and when he doesn't in a game, he does look kind of more human.
Yeah,
I suppose, especially some of those one-time shots towards the edge of the box in the central area, you expect him to make. That was my team. Your team, 5-0 over Southampton. You sent Russell Martin packing. Thank God.
I did. Yeah.
Can you imagine being one of the worst teams in the Premier League, having a significant talent deficit versus everybody else, and deciding that the best strategy for your team is to hold the ball on your own side of the field, which, as we know, creates the most chances for other opponents, because getting turnovers high up the field is one of the best ways, if not the best way, to score goals. It seems like Southampton are masochists a little
Tottenham are the best team in the league at exactly that, right?
Yeah.
In pressures in the attacking third, forcing the other team to turn the ball over in their own half, right? So if he was ever going to change against a team, I don't know if he thought, since we were Spurs, like, that we'd give him the 3 points, and he'd be able to be like, yeah, see, it worked. But I do think there's a comedy there, a commentary, if you will, on two managers would just so set in their ways about their play style and how it kind of works sometimes for the one and it's not worked once for the other. There's just something to be said there about the two managers refusing to change. It's a lot of plan B is do plan A better. And like you said, when you have a wage bill like Chelsea or like City or United, where you have like, you bought the personnel, you spent the big money, and somewhat Tottenham, you could get away with that, right? Like Pep is trying to do. Whereas when you
have to have ideas about what to do with the ball if you are a top level team, because you will in fact have the ball. Whereas Southampton, it seems like their goal is possession with no like goal or thought as to where that possession occurs on the field. Like if Southampton said, we want to have a lot of possession in the opponent's final third, that's very different than we're going to have 60% possession. Half of that is going to be in our own third, and we're just going to get turned over all over the pitch. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
All the shots they created, but they probably should have scored at least one of those, right? All came from counterattacks, right? So here's your sign, right? Like if you're only creating XG from counterattacks, maybe we should focus a bit more on a play style that suits that. Maybe get a little more clinical with those, and you can make a case. But I'm sure he thought he was being brave, and I guess there's something to be admired about refusing to change your ways. But even with Ange, sometimes you're just like, mate, just see out a game for once. Like, just for once, let's try and change here when the game changes. Yeah. But no, I mean, the plan B is literally do plan A better.
Yeah. Well, to Ange's credit, his principles at least align with modern thinking and analytical principles of how chances are created and prevented, whereas Russell Martin has some vague idea of possession that is entirely not clear. It reminds
Sure.
me a lot of Company and Burnley last year, kind
It
of almost carbon copy teams. And I think least entertaining, least fun of the
yeah.
promoted teams by far. So I hope they get somebody in that can do something. From a fantasy perspective, I'm a little more interested in Harwood Bellis if they get a manager who parks the bus for 90 minutes and tries to eke out some 1-0 wins. I was also looking at Adam Armstrong at 5.1 is probably like the cheapest starting
Yeah.
striker that we have in FPL. If they get anything out of offense or defense, I think both those guys are mildly interesting picks, I guess.
Do you think they both stay through the winter transfer window?
I think so. Yeah.
Dibling's getting a ton of good press, and I'm curious if he actually will stay on the sinking ship, or if they'll try and make some money before it's like a fire sale at the end of the season.
Yeah, he does seem like a get
Gareth Bale,
relegated.
heir apparent, is what everyone's saying.
Yeah. he's he's good for his age. I think he has 1 assist in the league
Yeah,
so far, so the numbers, sort of aren't there. But given his age, fine. He does, to me, seem like a player that they would sell when they get relegated to kind
yeah.
of cash in that fire sale period, to your point. On the Spurs side, it was another game where Spurs scored 5 goals and Solanke did basically nothing. I feel like we're kind of ruling him out as an FPL pick at this point.
I think he's unlucky not to get the 1 assist.
Would he have 5 points? I thought he had one
Did he get the
assist.
assist? Yeah, so you can't say he did nothing. Come on.
I guess 5-goal performance, you would expect him to be on the end of at least one of those chances, and hasn't happened for him yet.
He tried, you know. Can't
We
ask
get
much more than that.
BPS for trying.
For trying, yeah.
Do you see him as a guy that's going, like, when Spurs have these big games and big wins, it's just this pattern that continually occurs where Solanke is not the guy that fits, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I think it's just the way the nature of how they play against some of these teams where, and you can kind of, I guess, rule Man City into this, but when Solanke is, or when we have the ball less, right? Solanke is the one pressuring and usually forcing that turnover, so he's in behind, like against Chelsea, right? And that's where he's better off scoring from. And when we've got the ball, it's a little harder to get him the ball because he's like a hold up 9, and that's fine, and he'll pass the ball off. But he wants the ball running through the channels, right? He wants to turn and hit, or score the odd header off a set piece. And I think those are just a bit fewer and far between in games like this. If you look at Tottenham and you look at our goal tallies, right? The score lines are always either like 4-1, 5-0, 4-0, 3-0. And when we lose, it's like 2-1, 3-2, 4-3, right? Like we only ever really lose by 1, but we really never have a problem. And it might just be like an Embuemo thing, how we expected him to perform in these games against better opponents rather than in the games against the weaker ones, because he doesn't have to be that sole source of points,
Yeah, fair enough. Going to the other coach that was sacked this week, Gary O'Neill. We talked a little bit about Wolves, Ait-Nouri, obviously out of a lot of teams at this point. Strand Larson, Cunha, still decently owned. If Cunha is suspended, who do you think the best Cunha replacement is? I was looking at back to Chris Wood. Seems like the easy, obvious, like-for-like replacement. You could downgrade to a budget forward, João Pedro, Raul, who actually Fulham have the best fixtures of this group, home to Southampton next week. Jamie Vardy is home to Wolves next week before a run of tough fixtures. Or, again, you could try and upgrade to Isak by sacrificing elsewhere. Jace, if you were a Cunha owner like myself, what do you think you would do with that forward spot?
I don't have any additional budget.
Well, let's say we can try and upgrade where appropriate. How would you prioritize?
What do you think of Gakpo?
I was thinking about Jota actually this week, but I'm glad we're both circling the Liverpool front line because
Yeah, they
Jota
both
now,
scored. I guess that's fair. Yeah.
they both scored. Jota is now back from injury. If you remember, started the season as the Liverpool
Mm-hmm.
number 9. Luis Diaz has been playing there, not been effective. Darwin can't get any minutes.
Well,
It's
that's
it's
because
not,
Darwin's a donkey.
yeah, not a Cunha replacement, but it's funny that we went to the same place of like maybe there's some underlying potential here in the Liverpool
Yeah,
front line.
I think I don't know, man. It's tough. The minutes thing is tough to guess with Slot because he played like his best 11 against whoever it was last week when they were number 1 in the Champions League and they could have lost and it did, you know what I mean? It did in a game that seemingly didn't matter. He still put out his best 11, which makes it a little more difficult to gauge kind of how he's going to select. But to me, Gakpo seemed a bit more involved and he's more fit than Jota. So that's kind of just where my head went. But if either one you go with is going to be a huge differential right now. So I think that's the point I'm trying to make. And once you get past this Tottenham fixture, which really isn't red, right? There's a really good chance there's going to be 3 or 4 goals in this fixture. You got Leicester at home and West Ham away after that. So that buys you 3 game weeks until Cunha comes back and they've probably figured out who the manager is and we've had some time to evaluate and you can bring him back in if you want or not. You're probably not losing money going to Gakpo or Jota like you would if you went to some of these other options and things turn in the
Yeah.
immediate future, you know?
I don't think I can get there yet, but to your point, he's played 60 plus minutes in 4 straight game weeks. In game week 13, 1.37 goal involvements, and against Fulham at home, 0.59 goal involvements in 69 minutes played, despite Liverpool being on the red card for
Right.
or down to 10 men for most of that match. So I agree. If he keeps getting 60 to 70 minutes per game, I think he's definitely an interesting pick at 7.1 million. Anybody else on your radar in this price bracket? What do you think about going back to Wood versus downgrading to, let's say Raul has the best fixtures of the sub 6 million forwards?
I don't trust Raul again. He burned me for all those game weeks. So, and then he scored when I sold him. So I'm out on Raul, especially with that impressive finish from Muniz, if you can call it that, at the weekend. But I don't mind going back to Wood at all. He's got Brentford away, Tottenham at home, Everton away in his next 3. And he is significantly cheaper than the other options. The only issue is he's still about 24, 25% owned.
Right.
So it's a little bit less of a differential going to him. And he's definitely consistent, but the part where he's consistent is overperforming his XG, which I just don't know how sustainable that is across a long timeline, right? Across a full season. Even if the season ended today, I think you could say Chris Wood had a great season, right? So I don't want anyone to mishear that, but to me, a lot of his goals seem to be coming from those instances, and I just don't know that's where I want my points coming from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, fair enough. The other guy in this bracket that we didn't talk about is Wissa.
Yeah.
Home to Nottingham Forest, away to Brighton, home to Arsenal, away to Southampton, home to City, home to Liverpool. Brentford's upcoming fixtures, and this applies to Bumo as well, are quite difficult, but we know in those games that Wissa and Bumo tend to play as the 2 up top. He could be a decent differential at 10% owned. Again, him versus Chris Wood. I think Chris Wood is just like a weighted blanket. You know, it's safe, it's comfortable. He's not going to be like a problem in your team, you know, despite the fixture turn. He kind of got through the quote unquote tougher fixtures that Forest had. And, you know, to your point, Brentford have been one of the worst defensive teams in the league this season. Getting them next, I think is good for him. Speaking of Forest, they beat Villa 2-1. Are Forest number 1 the coolest team in the Premier League this season? Are they like the hipster team this year?
I mean, absolutely. They're your fun. Like you go to the local pub here in the U.S. and you see one dude in a Forest shirt in a sea of United and Arsenal fans. You're like, all right, that's a cool dude. That guy probably likes rock climbing and drinking yerba mate and all that stuff. Yeah, I would go with that. They're a ton of fun to watch still as well. They had some really cool interactions down the line with Morgan Gibbs White, you know, somehow keeping a ball in with a backheel pass. It's just kind of free flowing. A little different than we've seen from Nuno, I think, from a
Hmm.
formation standpoint. I don't like when he was at Tottenham, he was a 3-back guy, and we didn't play any sort of attractive football like this. Obviously, he was there at Wolves for so long, but I don't know if that's just because they've splashed the money to get the players so frequently. It's been kind of a revolving door there
Sure.
the last three transfer windows, but they're fun to watch.
It, I think, is really instructive about hiring a manager. If you are a team with a talent deficiency, you go get a manager who is really good at defense, and that
Yeah,
can significantly raise your floor in this league, which is where I think somebody like a Wolves, for example, ironically, given that Nuno was very successful there, they had an offensive coach in Gary O'Neill, or someone that leaned offensive.
and sold all his offensive assets.
Well, yeah, to be fair, this is not all on Gary O'Neill, but I think when you compare the two managers stylistically, you would certainly say he's more of an offensive coach. It's
Sure.
difficult to win games consistently with a talent deficiency. If you have a talent advantage, then you need an offensive coach. You need somebody that has ideas about what to do with the ball. And it seems like whether they did it on purpose or by accident, they stumbled in it because Nuno was available. Forest were a team with a talent deficiency that have significantly improved their defense. They have just enough offensive talent to score goals in situations that matter. They have run a little bit hot, but not defensively. The defensive numbers have matched their
Yeah.
output. So yeah, I think is a very good manager to club to like talent fit that seems to have worked really well, and good for Chris Wood too. I think it's a nice story this season.
Are you going to use your assistant manager chip on Nuno?
I should, but the problem is Forest are probably still underdogs in most games, and
Absolutely.
they're going to be ahead of everybody in the table. By the way, the assistant manager chip, we should have started with that. I forgot that happened because that
Yeah.
was so fucking insane.
Like I said, it was a weird week at FPL this week. You got the assistant manager chip. You got all this post-game stuff with Wolves. You got James Madison getting FPL towers to change their minds. There's some weird stuff going on with the game, I'll say it.
So let me try to explain the assistant manager chip to you, and let's see if I get it correct.
Okay.
Okay. So it doesn't become a chip until January.
Mm-hmm.
When you play it, it's 3 game weeks.
Yep.
And when you play it, you cannot use any other chips.
Correct.
When you play it, you can transfer in a manager that comes out of your budget, but you don't get any extra budget. But they also count against your team's limit for that club's players. And you can transfer managers in and out during this 3-week window. You're not stuck with whoever you pick first. You get some points if they win, some points if they get a clean sheet, some points if they score goals, and then a random amount of points if said manager happens to beat somebody higher in the table than them. I cannot think of a more complicated way to implement such a simple idea, which is a coach chip. They're like, let's make this as difficult as possible for casual players to understand, which feels like the antithesis of all of FPL Tower's motivation. I mean, it's worse than I could have imagined, Frank.
It was funny because we joked about it, right, a couple of pods ago on like it being a coach chip. But like you said, couldn't imagine it being as complicated as I didn't know they cost money. That just seems kind of unfair with how they've priced the game so far and how most of the top players are utilizing. It's like punishing you for utilizing their budget to the full extent. So you're probably not using this chip until after you wildcard. But at the same time, I mean, that is a lot to keep in mind for 3 weeks.
The comments on the tweet were not good. I'll just say it was not good. FPL mate, I play this game for a living and even I'm confused. FPL Thorpe, what? 2 question marks. Lots of comments like that. One of my favorites was Let's Talk FPL, who said, new leak for next season, the physio chip. Physios
Oh
will
yeah,
range from 0.2 to 0.7 million. You can own a physio and manager. It just gets worse and worse and worse. It just seemed like a simple concept to me that they completely miffed. I just don't get it at all. From a gameplay and fairness standpoint, too, you and I both played the triple captain chip on
yeah.
Holland in game week 2. Some managers didn't. They have now this opportunity to play the triple captain in a double game week. Those points are going to be offset by managers that can now play this manager chip in a double game week and essentially recoup all those points. Like, because of the limited number of double game weeks, introducing this chip later is actually bad for people that still have the triple captain chip.
Not for us, though.
I feel for though. Not for us, but I feel for those people, right?
Yeah, every time we talk about our ranks and stuff, I try to not remember that we already used our triple captain chip. So
well, don't worry, we got another one.
Artificially inflated, but now this has kind of saved you a little bit, at least. So,
and it's not even a bullshit chip in terms of points either. It's like 30 or 40 points that you can get from this chip, which is better than any of the other chips.
Someone did the math on Crystal Palace's run at the end of last season. Had you used the chip in this 3-game run, you would have gotten over like 100 points or something like that,
which is crazy.
It's huge. Yeah.
All right, well, we got to find this year's Crystal Palace, but what a fucking stupid
Maybe it'll be
idea.
this new Southampton coach.
Yeah.
Or the new Wolves coach.
Yeah,
it'll be cheaper.
See. We'll see. Where were we, by the way? Cunha replacements, Wolfsack, O'Neal. We talked about Forest being a cool team. We like Chris Wood. Nuno, etc. Maybe we flip to another new manager. We've been checking in on United and Amorim every week.
Yeah.
2-1 at the Etihad. Sort of a deserved 2-1, I felt like.
Yeah, I think you can really say that about any team that City play at this point. I feel like they're just not the best team anymore. Let's be honest, this game sucked from kind of minute 1 until about the 87th minute or something like that. It took them 20 minutes before either one of them registered his shot, let alone, a good shot. So, I don't know. It was not a great representation of what the Manchester derby could be until, like I said, the last 5 minutes of added time, things got spicy. But like the City defenders, it was Guardiola, like looked like he jumped over the ball.
Yeah,
when it was going into the goal, it was just a comedy of errors. You're just thinking to yourself, "There's no way this is going in," but it did really make me consider Ahmad in the midfield. I mean, he does not seem like he's going away. I mean, what's he averaging point-wise now? It's got to be at least 1 goal contribution a game over the last 5 game weeks.
Yeah, I'll have to pull up his returns. I think you're right. He has 5. I want to say he has 5 and 6, 65 points on the season. Yeah, 5 returns in 6 game weeks. Only blanked in game week 14 against Arsenal. I think,
which is forgivable.
Which is forgivable. Amorim decides that Rashford and Garnacho are not in the squad.
Yeah, not at the level.
We don't know why specifically. Something about attitude. Like, there's no injury. I think he just felt like they weren't professional. Rashford, I understand. I think that's the first we've heard that from
Garnacho.
About Garnacho, which I thought was a little.
We've heard this from Rashford from like the last 3 managers. I feel like there's no way he stays at United past this season.
I don't think so. He seems like a prime candidate for Paris Saint-Germain because they don't give a shit what you do there, right?
That's what they were saying that like 2 seasons ago, Yeah. It was always PSG and Rashford, so I would imagine that's where he ends up. But he seems like he has an attitude problem. Big set of balls on Amorim, though, to bench those 2 because they were kind of, maybe Rashford's always been United's kind of star boy, but Garnacho was a standout from the Ten Hag era. And with someone like Antony making the bench over you just has got to be a huge slap in the face.
Yeah. I feel like Rashford is capable of playing wingback. Maybe not, but like if you're going to put Antony and Ahmad in that position, it does seem like Marcus Rashford could play
capable, sure. Will he actually
wingback?
Run? I don't think so.
Maybe not.
I think he's just past that point in his career. I don't think he wants to run anymore. Kind of like João Pedro in the Brighton match.
Back to Ahmad. Like, I think he's obviously a good pick. if he
Yeah.
plays in United's front three.
Mm-hmm.
My question is he still a good pick if he plays wingback?
As a wingback. But in this match, it was Mazraoui and Dallo playing the wingbacks.
Correct.
And if
He was
that's
in
how
the
they're
front
going to,
three.
and if they can do that against City and create as, well, I won't say that, but still be competitive. I always thought Mazraoui was going to be that guy in the wingback spot.
Yeah.
But it turns out it was Dallo and Mazraoui was in the back three. And there was this thing. But, I think that's not going to go away. I think it brought them success, and I'd love to see it against a team that's not Man City and see how they do,
Yeah. I'm not sure if Imran, we know he plays 3-4-3 no matter what. He's a system guy. That's the system. That's what they play. But there has been a lot of rotation in the team.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see over the next few weeks if that settles because, again, if Ahmad is in the front three, he is in every FPL team. He's a great pick.
Absolutely.
If he's half in the front three and half at wingback, I still think he's in every team. He's a great pick. The question is, if he's a wingback mostly, and against City, he played more advanced or whatever, is he still a pick? A couple of weeks ago, we said no. Now, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
What did you
I'd
think
take
of
him over Fernandez, so.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, what did you think of Bruno in this one? Penalties are good, but
penalties
other
are good.
Than that,
it still didn't really seem like he did much to help the team outside of the penalties. He gave the ball away a couple times still. I'm just not sold on the Bruno Fernandez pick. I just think you got better options there. And I think your money goes just as far with Ahmad than it does with Bruno. If not, or your money goes further with Ahmad than it does with Bruno. That's what I should have said.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting to the point where if I want, let's say both Isak and Jackson in the front three, one of the ways I can make that happen is downgrading Saka to Bruno.
Yeah.
Which Saka, after 3 straight blanks, Bruno seems to have found some form. It's close if that's the difference between Isak and Chris Wood up top. What do you think about that?
I think Saka's tough because you got Crystal Palace away, Ipswich at home, and Brentford away as your next 3.
That's true. The fixtures for Saka are really good.
Just hemorrhage goals, which is part of why I want to bring Saka in this week, potentially. Because even when Saka blanks, he's getting a point for the clean sheet, which you can't say for the other midfielders. And there's something to be said for that across a long enough timeline,
Yeah.
Those points do add up. So I don't know that I like that. I don't know that I hate it either. I don't think Højlund's a pick, right? But they've got pretty good fixtures coming up. Bournemouth home, Wolves away, Newcastle home. Those are 3 things that a forward player can make hay on, but I guarantee you they're going to give up goals in all 3 of those matches. I don't think they have a clean sheet in them right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, your point about Saka fixtures, that all factors in. I guess I'm just saying, Bruno he's below the premium tier in midfield, but has been returning.
Just barely.
So if there's a trade down, maybe you could create some funds there.
Sure.
Speaking of, you want to move on to transfers and captaincy, or is there anything else in the game week you wanted to hit on?
No, this last game that just finished before we recorded, right? The Bournemouth-West Ham game, I think is pretty funny for Jarrett Bowen owners. Myself.
Oh my God. Yeah. Great game for us. Not owning.
Great game for us. Yeah.
Not owning Fabianski, not owning Bowen. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And then watching him give the ball away to Paqueta on the pen is just really funny to me. We already talked about how Bournemouth couldn't finish a attacking sequence to save their lives, but that's all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, that was a shitty game until it wasn't. That was another one where
just like
half...
the Manchester Derby, where you're like, I can't believe I wasted 80 minutes watching this game, and then the last 10, you're like, oh, okay, and maybe that's most people's complaint with football in a nutshell, right? Never with Tottenham, but with some matchups, I can see that being a pretty big complaint.
Yeah,
but whatever.
Fair enough. All right, let's move over to Team Jace. So Ait-Nouri is already out for Anthony Robinson. I think that will be a popular transfer this week. Robinson, 2 assists, home to Southampton. Also just incredible game from him, I thought. I would be
Robinson.
surprised if he doesn't move in January.
Oh, you think he moves in January?
I think he goes to Liverpool.
In January?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, wow. I figured he would go in the next season. I don't know that he goes in January, but hell, if he can go in January, I'd do that too. He'll win a Premier League and potentially a Champions League for half a season's worth of work. I think he's the best fullback in the league right now. Forget
Yeah.
like top three. I think he's the best. I don't know who
I agree.
I would put better than him in a form contest. But yeah, so I'm happy for that one. I'll figure out what I want to do with my second transfer. I might take a hit and send Holland home and do the Isak Saka switch for a couple weeks and see how I like that. Just because the Aston Villa game away seems like it'll be a tricky one, and City just do not seem like they're getting any better. The benefit is they don't play midweek, but still.
Yeah. So you could get both Isak and Saka this week if you were willing to. That's only 1 -4?
Yep, 1 -4, and that's with Semenyo, not with Emblemo either. So I could do Semenyo or Rogers. And
yeah, you'd be able to keep Bumo. So your midfield would be Bumo, Salah, Saka, Palmer, Rogers, plus Isak, Evan Nielsen, João Pedro, front seven.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
Yeah, could be worse.
Can you get to Jackson too?
Or why would I want to?
Well, fair enough. But you don't have. I think you've done a really good job with your defense here because you don't have a
except for Ait-Nouri.
Well, except for Ait-Nouri, but you don't have a premium. Like I've got Gabriel, Trent, and Raya, which have kind of like anchored a lot of my money back there. Whereas you have Timber, who I think is one of the better defensive picks in the game. Hall, who's one of the better defensive picks in the game. Now you have Robinson, who's one of the better defensive picks in the game. You have Mikolenko on the bench. Like, you have good players that don't cost much in defense, which is what you want.
I got them early too, as well. I got ahead of both price rises on both the players, so I could transfer them out now and make the 0.2 that you can make. So I don't feel bad, and like you said, I don't hate having Hardwood Bellis in the games. I don't hate having Mikolenko. I really hated having Ait-Nouri, so I'm glad he's gone.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I like it a lot. If you got Isak, would you think about captaining him this week away to Ipswich?
Yes, I would. But it's really hard for me to not captain Salah against Tottenham at Tottenham Stadium. I know we're probably going to lose by a goal, but Salah could also have 3 goals in that fixture. You know what I mean? And everything is going through him right now. I'm much more confident captaining Salah at Tottenham than I am Palmer at Everton. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's fair. And Tottenham are still down Van de Ven.
Yeah,
and
without
Romero.
Their 2 center backs, right? We're down a fullback. Destiny Dogie came out with back injury at like early in the game. Whether that's precautionary or not, who can say? But we play midweek, so I'm sure we'll have 3 more injuries at the midweek. Postecoglou is literally pulling children out of school so he can fill a team sheet. So I don't hate Mo Salah. The only downside is we don't have Eric Dyer to head him a ball in our own 18 this season, like he has the last 20. So I'm probably thinking of captain Salah for that reason. But transfer wise, that's my plan right now. Is maybe I'll bring in Saka and finally send Holland home because he's just not doing it for me. And not only is he not doing it for me, he's really not looking like he's going to do it for me. You know?
Yeah, that's fair enough. And you get Saka ahead of away Palace, home Ipswich, away Brentford. We talked about what a good fixture run that is. Do you think you'll have any Holland regret when he plays Everton and Leicester City?
I really don't know. Just because it could go like with Everton, the way they set up against Arsenal, I thought was like a Sean Dyche masterclass. You know what I mean? Like if you can stave off the set pieces, but you know what I mean? And I thought he did really well. So maybe this Everton team knows what they're doing. So the Leicester one, sure. We saw what Newcastle did to him. They picked him apart. So I might regret it in that match. But for the immediate ones, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think Branthwaite being back for Everton too also makes a massive difference to their defense because they kind of have the two big guys central, which they hadn't had. And Ashley Young, by the way, is the fourth highest scoring defender in FPL right now. If that tells you anything about the Everton defense.
Did you see that thing with who they drew in the FA Cup where he could play against his son, like a reverse LeBron?
No, but that's incredible.
Could be the first Premier League father-son like to play against each other, which is kind of crazy.
Or a football pyramid, not necessarily Premier League.
Yeah, sorry. Football pyramid, thank you.
Yeah. Amazing. All right, we'll go over to Team Chris. My original plan was to roll the transfer this week after using 2 moves last week. It all depends on Cunha if he's suspended. If he is suspended, I'm torn between kind of like for like back to Chris Wood, good fixtures, solid X minutes, or potentially downgrading to Raul, save some money, but big X minutes concern with Raul, especially over the festive fixtures, and form concern as well. Fulham's fixtures on paper just look incredible.
Yeah.
So for 5-5, it's tempting. That's an extra $1 million between Raul and Chris Wood. But
I just have a feeling that Muniz is going to come in. He's been returning off the bench. I do too. So that's just, I just think you're setting yourself up for failure there.
We saw Silva earlier this season where Muniz was the starter.
Mm-hmm.
Raul as a substitute scored. Raul started the next game. And then recently we saw Raul have a bad run of form. Muniz got a start when there was a little bit of fixture congestion. So I agree, especially knowing that I think Jackson's going to get rotated a couple games. It'd be nice to have somebody with a better X minutes projection over the next few weeks. So we'll see. Hopefully Cunha does not get suspended. I get his fixture against Leicester going to next week with 2 transfers, can reassess. But if he is suspended, it's probably Cunha to Chris Wood. And man, I tried 8 different ways to Sunday to figure out how I could get in Isak with a -4. There's no way to do it unless I sell Trent, which is the move I made last week. I think I have to stick with Trent given Liverpool's fixtures and the double, but we'll see. So far, has not paid off.
Captaincy-wise?
I think I'm with you. It's probably Salah away to Tottenham. I wasn't that impressed with Palmer this past week. I do really like, if you own him, captaining Isak away to Ipswich as a differential. So I'd probably say Salah, Isak, Palmer would be my rankings. How about you?
Yeah, I'm probably with you. What's the expected points return? Tell us.
Salah is currently projected at 6.9 points, Palmer at 6.7, Isak at 5.9, Haaland at 5.6, Saka at 5.6, and Bruno Fernandes at 5.6. But again, this is Monday. Those projections are subject to change as we get further in the week. But Salah, Palmer kind of in the top tier. I bet Isak's projection goes up a little bit more towards those guys. And I really hate not owning him this week especially.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right. Lastly, just a reminder on the upcoming deadlines. Game Week 17 deadline is this Saturday, the 21st. We're planning to have a show prior to the Game Week 18 deadline, which is Boxing Day. That's the 26th. Game Week 19 is then the Sunday after that on the 29th. So again, we've got 3 league fixtures within a period of 8 days. Definitely be mindful of rotation, especially from your front 7, because it is coming. Just a reminder to rate, review, and subscribe to our show on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at FPL_freehitpod. Join us next week to recap Game Week 17 and look forward to Game Week 18 on Boxing Day and Game Week 19 after that. Good luck.